Arizona Sunshine released on December 6th, 2016, and was for all intents and purposes a well-received game. This was in spite of its locomotion system, which sees you teleport, but with stamina that prevents you teleporting too often or too far. Lots of people experience motion sickness, and teleportation is generally considered easier on the stomach. But there were many disappointed that there was no option for those with more experience of VR, or even those willing to play in smaller bursts to get a greater sense of immersion. I personally was not at all interested in teleportation, and decided to wait until Arizona Sunshine was either patched or eclipsed by newer titles. I didn't really look into any of the media around Arizona Sunshine, so when I found out that traditional locomotion was being introduced, I jumped at a chance to buy, play and review this title. Going in blind, and I am glad I waited. So first up, VR implementation. When I booted up for the first time, I accidentally started the game with the traditional locomotion system. It's fine, but it sucks. Let's be honest, moving in VR can be disorientating, and motion sickness is a thing. Thankfully, it's a thing that you can work on, and the answer to the question of what we do about motion sickness can't be don't let players move. Ironically, in my experience it also doesn't really accommodate smaller room setups. I play with the minimum play space for room scale VR, which is 2 by 1.5 meters, and I find that if I'm forced to teleport and move in unnatural ways, then I end up with two recurring problems. Firstly, a greater reliance on controller turning, i.e. the right thumbstick, which is probably the thing that gives me the most motion sickness and eye strain. And secondly, standing perfectly on the spot and rotating in real life is just not something I'm good at when I'm trying to get immersed in a game. I find it a lot easier to move in an immersive and also practical way when I'm given a real locomotion option. Effectively, gaining the left thumbstick to walk allows me to fine-tune to what I find smooth and comfortable, and not what makes my stomach turn. Anyway, enough about that. It's safe to say that Arizona Sunshine now has a very nice movement system in place. You can walk and you can run. You can strafe, and you can set an option to get smooth controller turning, which you don't really want to use often, but sometimes you will get tangled up and it can be helpful. Unless you ceiling mount your wires, which I don't. I'd have to say that the movement system in Arizona Sunshine is probably the best I've used. The weapon play is great. Again, probably the most polished shooting I've seen in VR, except for maybe Superhot, which I don't think is a fair comparison, given that's pretty much the only thing that Superhot does. You'll occasionally get a gun that you don't jive with because it feels unintuitive to aim it, which if anything just reinforces the differences. You're limited to 4 ammo types, and maybe the odd grenade here and there. All of the guns of the same class use the same ammo, which means that your revolver will shoot your Glock bullets. I've no complaints about this. It means if you find a pistol with iron sights you enjoy, then you'll be able to happily blow away enemies all day. And if you're like me, you'll spend a lot of time with one eye closed aiming down the iron sight, so it's important you find one you like. There is good variation between the weapons of each ammo type, allowing you to change and find something that suits you, be it a larger mag size or a meatier shot. You can spend the entire time dual wielding too. However, moving and shooting do butt heads in a noticeable way. You use your left thumbstick for moving, press it in for sprinting, and press the lower button on the controller, at least on the Rift, to release your mags to do your reload animation, which, by the way, is as simple as releasing the mag, then moving your gun to your ammo belt. This makes it very hard to move and keep your left gun fully operational. Sometimes you'll drop your mag early, and sometimes you'll be frantically moving away whilst your gun makes that disgruntled click 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 sound. Finally, on the VR specific side, interaction with the game world is very solid. The feel of rifling through drawers really comes across, and aside from having to open car boots and doors into my face sometimes, it felt super. You can pick up pretty much anything, but sadly it's absolutely pointless. It doesn't really detract from the experience, but you won't be getting anything from throwing a can of soup at a zombie. It's a shame that there are melee weapons dotted around that will do absolutely nothing for you. I'm not really sure why they'd even tease you like that. Presentation. The game world looks and sounds great. The amount of jank here is kept to a serious minimum. A few interactions like zombies with doors and the odd weird dancing corpses aside, this is a polished game. The sounds all do their job very well and never took me out of it, except from maybe the explosions, which felt unnecessary and lackluster. The voice actor is really likeable.
You didn't pay! No! We have zero tolerance for fare evaders.
The soil is compacted crisply by your boot. There's a constant chirping of grasshoppers. Little musical embellishments when you progress the plot, and then fairly tense music when you're forced into scripted confrontations. This delivers the polish we're all looking for from our VR titles. The pseudo-battle theme is repeated, but I can't say I really noticed it when I was actually playing the game. The world is full of character, and is pretty believable, at least for someone who knows fuck all about Arizona. It's cowboy land, and the colours used to paint the landscape certainly give it that iconic feel. Story and critique. Arizona Sunshine is a linear, story-based game. probably more so than it looks from early trailers. There's definitely a story there. The locations all work together to create an internally consistent journey, and it almost has a Last of Us vibe to it at times. And that's not just because some of the zombies are all covered in spores. One of my only real criticisms of the game's story is at times I don't really know what it's going for. You've got an arcadey presentation as you see in the start screen, you have a jokey opening, and you've got a likeable protagonist who makes dad tier jokes and comments at the zombies.
No. Fred, is that you? Fred, what did you do this time? You pissed someone off, huh?
And then you have moments that are genuinely supposed to make you feel emotions other than mirth or a quick shock. Not a lot of them, but they're definitely there. The game certainly becomes more serious as it progresses, and it's not that hard to come up with reasons to rationalise why it makes perfect sense. At the start of the game, our hero is isolated and seemingly adapted to solitude, and as it progresses, he may see a chance to return to some kind of normality. But the story definitely doesn't always gel with the presentation of the game. It feels like a third of the enemies in the game are bikini babes and buff dudes, and this one guy who looks like a slow Loris. Maybe this is some kind of hardware limitation issue, and if I just bought that Intel i7 and unlocked those extra skins. This is where my real critique of the game comes in. There are two sides to Arizona Sunshine. There's the playful, almost day-to-day treatment of zombies that stems from our protagonist's cool demeanour. There's the interchangeability of ammo types. There's a wealth of buff beach dudes and dudettes to execute. Then there's slow methodical movement, dark environments, limited ammo at times, and attempts at giving our protagonist a much more human side and making you really want him to get out of this situation. For an arcade game, the weapons and explosions are quite subdued, and the overall pace is a bit slow and down-tempo. But for a realistic game, the mechanics are basic, and the way encounters are framed are all a bit formulaic and predictable. I really feel that a slight push either way would have made this game feel a bit more like it knew exactly what it was trying to do. For example, not once rifling through drawers was I ever under any pressure to not fuck up, to go quicker. The downtime between killing zombies always felt like downtime. The mechanics are all there to deliver a really gripping survival game. Even in the darkest area, there was no real attempt to leave zombies in an unpredictable location. Just chilling in a little alcove that you brush your shoulder past. And that might be the result of the original level design being based around teleportation. I'd wager that teleportation made the encounters in this game less compelling. Similarly, there are big fights, but in my experience the difficulty was dictated only by how much ammo I had, and that was either way too much or just enough. A bit more variance in zombie types and attack patterns would have gone a long way. I didn't feel enough like a badass, and I didn't feel scared enough. Both elements were there, and I'd probably feel more comfortable writing this off as, well, it's an early VR title, it can't be that good, if the game wasn't so competent overall. Fun factor: Arizona Sunshine is fun. In fact, it's almost great at everything it does. For one of the first fully fledged VR games, it's an absolute winner. Whether it's smacking your head as you whiff one of the few bullets you have left because the zombie you were aiming at got a bit stumbly, or frantically trying to manage reloading two separate guns whilst a zombie horde bears down on you, Arizona Sunshine is hands down the best zombie VR game, and just generally the best PC VR has to offer right now. I had a lot of fun, and there is replayability there. It's also worth tacking on as an afterthought. I tried the Horde mode and found it fairly boring, but I'm sure there are some people who would enjoy it. I'm not against Horde modes in general, I just didn't think this one was that good. I also tried Apocalyptic mode, which is apparently basically one bullet per zombie and one hit and you're dead. I can't say I was very impressed with that, as it felt more tacked on than crafted for anyone's enjoyment. But I didn't progress past the first level, so who knows. Also, I didn't try any of the multiplayer, so I can't comment there. So, closing thoughts. I would certainly recommend this game to anyone with VR who has an interest in shooting, but doesn't want to play another wave shooter. Whilst it has its flaws and would maybe have been a more cohesive and immersive experience if it committed a bit harder to a specific style, it's still one of the few VR games out there that can justify the price tag. If you're like me, you'll come away reminded that VR can really offer a fresh and engaging experience, and I'm glad that developers are finally setting the bar so high. That's all from me. Don't forget to like if you like this review, subscribe if you want to see more, and tell me what you thought of Arizona Sunshine in the comments below. Thank you and goodbye.